Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's another Wednesday. It's another Conversations with Compassion, and welcome if you're watching, if you're new to watching. If you're new to watching, I'm Helen Ferguson. I'm a specialist trauma therapist and coach, and helping high-achieving women emotionally recover from trauma, challenging life experiences, and emotional overwhelm through self-compassion, self-acceptance, connection, emotional agility, and values, so that they can stand confidently in their self-belief and self-worth in their business and in their relationships and in their life. And I developed Conversations with Compassion because it's a passion of mine to destigmatize the idea of self-compassion as being self-indulgent, lazy. We women don't have time for it. We're busy, we're entrepreneurs, we're professional women. There is no space for it. Conversations with Compassion is to inspire you to understand that there is absolutely space for it in your life. And certainly as a trauma therapist, I'm all about self-compassion being the pathway to emotional healing. And it's the extension of compassion towards yourself that begins that journey. So enough about me, but I am really excited to have Louise here with us this morning. I love Louise, and I love reading everything that she's doing and hearing about what she's doing. And big congratulations to Louise also for becoming a best-selling author this week. I think it was this. I know. So we're gonna rock the conversation about self-compassion this morning, and I'm going to let Louise introduce herself because she can do it far better than I can. Louise, it's over to you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for having me. And I'm also thrilled to be here with you because I know we have a huge mutual reciprocal feeling of love and respect for one another. So thank you for having me. For those of you watching, whether it's live or on replay, my work is also with high performing and high potential women. And it's really directed to ensure they don't pay the price for their external success with their own health and well-being. So for nearly 20 years, I've been working with naturopathic medicine, which is also loosely now positioned as functional medicine, helping people to build resilience emotionally, mentally, physically, and physiologically, so that they have a reserve to draw upon when the proverbial hits the fan, as it does for all of us at different points in life, rather than gradually and insidiously wearing ourselves thin, losing that, draining that reservoir, and then when we need to dig deep, finding that our reserves are really spent. And that's when we get a situation often where women start to describe themselves as, I've never really felt well since.
Yeah.
and I hear it, so often. There's a pandemic of women that predates the pandemic.
The pandemic.
Well, to me, the pandemic is really is about women being so tired, and now so many women at the end of this last very challenging 18 months, really, finding that every day is a situation where it feels like they are walking through treacle or molasses, and that everything is just harder than it really needs to be. So, they may not be sick in a medical sense, but they are certainly going to be languishing. They'll be languishing mentally, languishing emotionally, languishing physically and physiologically, rather than, working towards flourishing or feeling like they are flourishing the vast majority of the time. And that's my mission.
And what a mission, Louise.
I guess that's why I ended up writing a book.
Yeah, I think so because I can hear it. I mean, I think the passion from both of us about what we do is very evident, and it's also inspiring for people to hear that passion for the mission that we have independently with our focuses. But what you do is incredible, and it's an amazing. I want to say antidote. It's not the right word, antidote, but it's an amazing kind of pathway for women to. And I know you also work with men. You, in brackets, you work with men. I saw that in your bio, in brackets. I also, in brackets, work with men when they get past all the pink and purple branding, and usually it's their wives that contact me to see if I would work with them. But it's an amazing pathway, and there's certainly a conjoining actually in terms of, you know, your work and my work. But one of the things I wanted to kind of start off asking you around this conversation is what self-compassion means to you, what it means to you as a woman, as a mom, as a partner, as an entrepreneur. Where does it fit with your life?
Yeah, so firstly, I just wanted to say that the use of the word antidote is actually, I think, really applicable, because I feel like my work and certainly your work are both part of the antidote to women. You know, I personally view what I do as an act of resistance.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we need, as women, we need to find the antidote, or the antidote that's right for us, versus the kind of, if you like, this is going to sound probably quite extreme to some people, but the kind of poison of female oppression and the patriarchal framework that continues to drive that. So I guess that's the first thing I want to say. I know you agree.
No, I do, because actually one of the things in terms of self-compassion therapy, self-compassion theory, intuitive self-compassion, all of which I'm trained in, self-compassion is the antidote to shame. And so, you know, that's where that sits with me. Everything that I do is an antidote to the shame and guilt that women feel for what they've experienced, what they're experiencing, the feelings of not being good enough, the feelings of not being worthy, not being lovable, all of the things that I hear in the room online with women in the room, when they first come and see me. And some women can't even look at me, but they've made that first step, that knowledge that they need something to shift where they sit in that shame and that guilt and those dreadful feelings that they're often been carrying around, but still managing to succeed in professionally and entrepreneurially, you know, and as a mum, but they know that something here is not right. So yeah, it was the right word to use.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, again, I agree with what you're saying. For me, both with my clients and also my personal journey, which, you know, let's be clear, for those of us that are doing this type of work, I think it's absolutely imperative that you know, we're continuing the work for ourselves, because the layers, you know, the layers just keep coming, as far as I can see. But although, you know, the majority of women come to me because they feel physically tired, they are mentally drained, they are holding a lot of guilt and shame around the fact that they don't have, you know, they might be perceived to have everything going on, but the balls that are in the air are progressively, you know, feeling heavier. They're noticing that they're dropping them here and there, and they're using a lot of energy, feeling really bad about that. And right. And then that becomes another drain on their internal resources and their internal capacity. And the first thing that I usually do when I hear that, you know, is going on internally, which it is for the vast majority of women, is that I talk about fostering a curiosity as the antidote to guilt and shame. That rather than at the end of a day when, you know, we are exhausted, or, you know, a client is exhausted, and all they want is wine and, you know, they feel like opening a box of chocolates, or, you know, whatever that feels like, that there's no need to berate ourselves, self-flagellate, and heap more shame upon ourselves, because in some ways it's entirely understandable when you hear what somebody is putting into their schedule on a day-to-day basis. What they need is permission to, you know, reduce the scope of what they're doing, to put some of those balls down, and also to start creating better boundaries and teaching others how they need to be treated. So it's a, as I say, it's a curiosity. It's fostering a curiosity. And it's also, as you know from my book, it's about starting to reposition ourselves back into the center and recognizing that we're the fulcrum. So if, you know, people will often use children, parents, work colleagues, whoever, as a way of, well, I can't prioritize myself because of all these people. But actually, that's one of the reasons it's so important that you do start to renegotiate relationships and set those better boundaries. Because if you don't do that, eventually, when that reserve is completely exhausted, you don't have the capacity for any of those people either.
Yeah, and you're right about, you know, you're absolutely right about curiosity. You know, I use it a lot. I train, I think, you know, I train a lot of foster carers and supervising social workers and adoptive parents to respond to the emotional needs of children who have been traumatized or abused. It's a part of my historical work of working directly with children and young people that have been abused, that I've wanted to keep up, because it kind of still links with what I do now, in some ways, because often I'm working or I'm training foster carers and adoptive parents who have experienced their own trauma, and being curious about emotion and exploring the needs behind those emotions and the needs behind those the needs behind those experiences is absolutely paramount. But and self-compassion is the foundation to be able to do that. Because if we're not self-compassionate, we can be curious and we can explore, but what, you know, there's sometimes kind of, but what do I do with it? How do I accept it? So I often work, when I'm training and teaching, around acceptance, curiosity, and empathy as a kind of pathway. And I still use that in the room with women that I'm working with. We become very curious about where some of these feelings, where some of these emotions come from, because my clients usually get to me almost at the very end of the tether. You know, they've tried everything else, and to be honest, they've had other therapy before, but it hasn't, quote unquote, worked. And so, you know, they've got to me at the end, and there's sometimes a part of me that thinks, oh, I wish they'd just been able to get to me before that point. It doesn't, you know, I'm still successful with them and they're successful with me, but I want women to be able to notice and acknowledge and be able to be accepting of where they are, so that they can move forward before it gets to the point where they're completely flat.
And it's similar with I was going to say, it's similar with my clients, in that, you know, one of the things that I teach them are the more subtle signs of, you know, the body and the mind being spent, rather than getting to this point where we're so depleted that we're at the point of burnout, and we've either had some kind of really acute, you know, physiological crisis, you know, a breakdown, or we're just like, I just cannot, you know, I just cannot function. I'm still just about getting there, but everything is so much of an effort. It's like my body just can't do it anymore. And you know, and that's obviously like with your process, it's a layered process, But, you know, a lot of it goes back to, well, we always, with my clients, I'm always looking at supporting the physiology in the way that individual needs that physiology supported. And that's where my background in, you know, my master's in science, in Western herbal medicine, my background in nutrition and so on and so forth comes in. At the same time, it's also about, as you say, you know, creating this self-compassion and this awareness around what I call the post-industrial hangover, whereby, you know, we went certainly in Britain from working about 150 years, 150 days each year, as you know, in villages, to suddenly being kind of herded into these factory type settings where obviously at that time there were no rules and regulations, and we suddenly started working about 312 days a year. And now I think it's Judith Shaw, the historian and economist that has got all that information that I've seen anyway. And, you know, and now we've got a situation where in the 21st century, we're still judging work-life balance against that standard. So we feel guilty when we rest, you know, like as women, a lot of women feel really guilty when they stop. They're like in perpetual motion. They put productivity before, you know, their own needs and the needs of their body. Their self-worth is based on the success of, you know, the external success of their career. Right. They believe that hard work, and men too, they believe that hard work equates to happiness. They feel lazy, you know, if they're not doing it all. And you would see this, even if somebody's in pain, unwell, traumatized, and dealing with significant adversity. And then they also have been conditioned to use busyness as a way of avoiding their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the treating of themselves harshly for not doing. I often use the phrase, you know, don't just decide what to do, decide how you want to be. And that, you know, often, you know, people kind of go, well, I haven't got time to be. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? You know, there's all, well, that's also part of the exploration. But the you know, when you've already experienced challenging life experiences, trauma, you know, you're a busy entrepreneur, you're building, you're a mom, you're doing all this, and then you treat yourself harshly for looking after yourself. It's like, you know, and I said to you, you know, I took a week off last week. I got to the Friday. I've been incredibly busy. I'm very pleased to say you know, about my success, but you know, I hope I'm an inspiration for other women around that. But you know, I got to last Friday and I was stood in my kitchen kind of thinking, something's off. Something's not quite right. You know, I don't normally feel like this, you know. And I am a bit of a Duracell bunny, you know, to say I will, you know, I'll hold my hand up. I don't sit in an ivory tower of being perfect. I do, you know, I'm constantly kind of doing, but I'm also, I do meditate and I do a lot of other things to look after myself. But I got to that Friday and thought, something's off, something ain't right here, you know. And I messaged a dear friend of mine I've known for 30 odd years, and I said, I don't suppose you've got time for a chat. She's a holistic energy healer, but I wasn't phoning her for that. I was phoning her for a friend, and we just kind of chatted it through. And she said, when was the last time you stopped? When was the last time you had a holiday? And I said, well, over 4 years ago was the last time I had a holiday. And she went, well, there you go, Helen.
Hello.
So, and she said, what's stopping you from taking a week off? And I said, well, I do have one-to-one clients. And I was kind of going, and I started to do all the things, well, I can't, you know, what I'm going to be punished by social media for not posting and blah, 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 all the stuff. And then I thought, my business isn't going to go down the toilet because I take a week off. My clients are still going to be there. They're still going to be, you know, there's still, you know, women waiting to see me and needing that support. So I still saw my one-to-one clients because I wasn't going to take an
yeah,
impromptu.
short notice. Yeah.
I always say and I then did a live when I got back on Monday, and I did a live, and people thought I was apologizing for being off. And I said, no, I'm not apologizing for being off. I'm saying, notice, listen, respond, acknowledge, listen to what you need, acknowledge, and exactly that, be curious about what you want to be doing, and be curious about what you need, what all of those signals are telling you that you need. So I'm never apologized. I would never apologize for being off, but I wanted to get a very clear message across that, it doesn't matter how busy you are, and there is a bit of a badge of honor that goes with the term busy, and I hear it from people. It's a misplaced badge of honor, but I hear it that, well, what do I do? Even some of the work that I ask women to do, it's like, well, I'm not sure I've got time to do it. And I said, well, you've come to me because you want to invest in yourself. That includes doing that work outside of the sessions with me. So then there's like, oh, right, okay, yeah, priority myself. And that is a difficult thing for people to do, for women, certainly that I work with, to prioritize themselves.
Yeah. And actually, one of the things I wanted to pick up on what you said, which is that I've noticed over the years, is that, women find it much easier to relate to and connect with other women that are wielding that badge of busyness. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it is seems to be the majority of women's experience. So when women look around, they don't necessarily see many role models that do put their hand up and go, hey, you know what? I'm taking a whole week away. And I don't mean I'm taking a whole week away and I'm still posting on Instagram stories every 5 minutes. I'm actually taking a week away. I'm honoring my commitments to my one-to-one clients because I've decided to do this at short notice because I know inherently this is what I need, but it's over and out from me for a period of time.
Yeah.
So what you've got is a situation, there's a lot of leaders in the female entrepreneurial space who are saying one thing, but doing something different. And then because so many women have their fangirl filter on, they don't see the incongruency. They don't recognize it. They just think that this person's got it all going on and this is how it needs to be done. And this is what success looks like. And then the other thing is that when women post things that are, oh, I'm so tired and this and that and the other, you will notice, and I'm sure you have, that they tend to get a lot more attention than if they, this morning I was feeling so fabulous. I mean, like, I feel good. I feel good most of the time. I was like, I did a check-in and I was like, my God, I'm feeling fabulous today. Like, I really feel fabulous. It's fantastic. And I was like, I was going to post on social media and say, I feel absolutely phenomenal. And I just didn't get around to it. And then it got me thinking about our conversation. I was thinking, it's much harder for women to connect with that because in my one-to-one consultations, in a first consultation, I always ask, one of the questions I always ask is, how do you want to feel? Like if you had to, I make it easy, right? If you had to, if you wanted to have your energy levels on a scale of 0 to 10, what are they now? And what would you like them to be? The vast majority of women do not ask for more than an 8 because they perceive that it's not possible to get the 10 naturally because they don't see anyone else having that.
Yeah.
I know we're slightly off track, but
no, it's not off track. Actually, I think it's absolutely still an integral component of self-compassion because that is, linked with self-compassion. Why can't we reach the 10? Why can't we, prioritize ourselves in that way? And there is a filter. There is a, I really struggle with the filter that I see on social media. The filter of this is how easy it is, or this is how it should be for you, or this is how your life could be. Look at the could be, instead of actually being accepting of what we actually want and what we need. And and what we want to achieve for ourselves. And instead of measuring it against perhaps what we're experiencing of seeing of others.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of undervaluing of what people have got and overvaluing of what they see others and they perceive others to have. And that just fosters this low level, discontent and feeling, again, perpetuates a feeling of I'm not good enough.
It's inadequacy. Absolutely. It's the feeling of inadequacy. And why are we, why are people feeding into that? That doesn't compute with me, because I'm just like, I'm all about, actually being the epitome of compassion that people need in order to find it for themselves, and the epitome of, wanting to inspire women, which is why I do this, why I have my group, why I work with women, why I chose to shift from working with children and young people, which was an incredibly valuable piece of work for those children, but to shift that to working with people like myself, high achieving women who, and I have experienced my own trauma. I have experienced my own emotional overwhelm. I was burnt out from being a manager in the NHS. And it took me a year to recover from that. So, and to be honest with myself about needing to recover. So, which, when you're on the hamster wheel, and especially, not my therapeutic work in the NHS, but the managerial work in the NHS, I was on a hamster wheel with high expectation, with little compassion coming my way. And then, this sudden surprise that I was like, well, I'm leaving. I remember my husband and I having this very kind of, great conversation sat on a rock on Dartmoor, about actually we needed to change our lives. And I said, well, and he said, well, I can live anywhere as long as I've got an airport, because he works away. And he said, well, why don't we move to Greece? So within 3.5 months, we'd sold everything. I'd left my work and we'd gone. And I, it's an amazing, once I got there, to realize that actually what was missing was compassion. What was missing was not just self-compassion, but compassion and empathy, towards me in that environment, and from a large group of people. But when we're on that hamster wheel, it's so often very difficult to notice. And I kind of really want to inspire women to notice, to listen, and certainly, the reason why I'm talking about it, because I think it resonates absolutely with what you're saying too.
Yeah, I think, I completely agree. I think, the reality is that nobody gives us a framework when we're younger. I mean, even if we haven't had a overtly traumatic experience as a child, we may have had a situation where we simply didn't have anyone in our family speaking our love language, for instance.
Yeah.
And, whatever's gone on in childhood, we're not, there's very few people helping their children to understand that, we've been gifted these bodies, but we are also more than those bodies, that we're here, as far as I believe, that we're here to fulfill, it doesn't necessarily have to be, feel like it's a particular mission or a purpose, but we're here to have this very human experience. And that's really, for me, the most important part of life is humaning. How am I going to show up as a human, for myself, for those around me, for those beyond me that, I have some influence on, but that aren't, my immediate family, friends, and one-to-one clients. And to understand that, we need to be our best friends. We need to talk to ourselves in a way like your friend spoke to you and said, well, hey, Helen, when did you last have a holiday? And what we need to do is to teach our children. This is one of my big things with my children, is teaching them to check in with themselves, to learn that, as we said before, these small details, maybe, you know, a little bit of compassion fatigue, which we all can get as practitioners.
Yeah.
A desire for more sweet foods, a desire to, you know, drink that second or third glass of wine where previously one glass of wine felt like it was sufficient. You know, the need to feel like we're having a bar of chocolate in the afternoon, that all those things, not waking, feeling rested, that all those really subtle things are signs that the body is, you know, in more of a depletion situation than in a renewing situation.
Yeah.
So, you know, and the same with emotions, you know, balancing out those emotions between, if I've had a lot of emotions today that felt depleting, where can I, you know, where can I move towards more of the renewal part of my emotional experience to offset that?
Exactly. Yeah. We've gone on a lovely journey of self-compassion in a different kind of way, which is great. I love it. I love it. Do you think that there was a pivotal moment that was for you about welcoming self-compassion into your life? Because some people there's like almost kind of myself, you know, I use myself as an example, and I don't mind doing that, but there are other women that I've worked with where they, you know, they've said, you know, well, it was at this point, it was this realization, and often sometimes women come to me because, you know, previously I would have worked with children but I don't now, but they've come to me to be curious about what their children are going through and saying, well, you know, they seem to be anxious, they seem to be this, I wonder, are you able to help them? And I say, well, let's have a conversation. And then I have the conversation and I say, it's not the children. You know,
the old target patient.
Yes. So that it is a bit, you know, and there's like, oh, do you think so? It's not there. Well, what do you think it is? And I then have this conversation with them about, well, what you're expressing right now, the way, you know, the way you physically are, that, you know, the tears, the, you know, the deep kind of pain that comes across in those conversations, that then, you know, leads, obviously, kind of, you know, leads to them continuing to work with me. But it's that understanding, you know, that there's been a moment. And sometimes that moment is they notice something in their children, or they notice something in their work, rather than necessarily themselves. So I was just wondering, you know, if there was a pivotal moment that you had, you know, without, you know, obviously safe conversation, but, you know, that you felt kind of self-compassion welcoming it into your life.
Yeah, so firstly, I would say in my late 20s, when I was burnt out, and it took me 2 years to recover. And that was the first kind of moment where I was like, how did I get here? Like, how did this happen? And that started the realization of being more aware around how I was talking to myself, shaming myself, really, you know, driving my life through my inner perfectionist, and, you know, trying to feel like I was enough by doing, and always, you know, excelling and collecting these external accolades. And of course, it doesn't mean that we can't have those, but, you know, it was apparent to me that something was not right. And so that was then a journey for the next while. Then when I had my biological, my first son, and the birthing process went very badly wrong from what we'd planned and then what actually happened. It's too long a story to share, but ultimately my husband was absolutely intrinsic in helping me. I can feel myself getting emotional about it, even though it's 12 years ago, in helping me to view myself with compassion at that time. And then when we adopted our second son, so our second son, it came to us through the adoption process. As you know, we fostered before and so on when we were younger. And I found that so difficult, because I was so triggered by the noises that he was making, because he wasn't really verbal at that time. And what I had never been placed in a position until that transition to realize that the experiences that I'd had when I was 2 or 3, with my younger sister having terrible problems with her inner ears and screaming the house down night and day, I'd never been in a position where that trauma had been triggered, and it was.
Yeah.
It was triggered. And I was, 40, nearly 48. So I was 45 at the time, 44, 45 at the time. So, there's been some very defining moments, and then there's always those more subtle, just ongoing, not imperceptible, but, profound, but not as like standout moments.
Yes, not as visible in that sense.
Yeah. So I'm most of the time now, I talk to myself in a very gentle and compassionate way. But I'm also, very much a believer that, and this is an example that I see a lot with women, is that women will say, "Oh, well, I'm being kind to myself, which is why I'm eating this box of chocolates for dinner." and I'm like, well, actually, that's not compassion. To me, that's not self-compassion. If you had a process of self-compassion, and this, I guess, is where I'm fortunate enough to be at, but I've been doing this for 20 odd years. Is that I have those moments where I'm like, I had a moment the other morning where, both my children were having an issue, like transitioning into their one's transitioning into P1, one's transitioning into S1. Don't recommend it. If at all possible, avoid. However, it is what it is. And I had a moment where I was like, if I was a drinker, I would definitely go home and probably have a drink now.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to come home and, have a little cry and just, go, God, that was really hard for them. And it was hard for me. And now I've let that emotional experience go, and I'm going to eat, I think I had an omelette or something, I'm going to nourish myself because
nourish yourself in a different way. Yeah.
Whereas, as I say, if I hadn't done the work, I could definitely see how, and I've had moments previously in my life where I've thought, oh, I could really, get stuck into a box. If I didn't have that awareness, and if I wasn't looking to see what do I really need in this moment, what, and it's often that we need something emotional. We need to give ourselves permission to feel, or, with parenting is, I'm not a mother that's like, oh, I love being a parent. I'm like, parenting is really effing difficult. But again, in terms of, it's so important for me to have compassion for myself, because when I'm not in that, that must do it a certain way and need to get it done by a certain time, all that, white patriarchal stuff, that embedded,
all the embedded.
Yeah. Then I know that my children are, they're having a much better time in life. And so am I.
Yay. Big kind of Mexican wave going on. Yeah. I do that quite often. Whenever it is quite fun. My clients who because I only work with women for 3 months, and so, but I work weekly with them, so that we do have this very kind of close and relationship, obviously, and there's particular statements that I hear that I'm like, do you realize I'm doing it in a Mexican wave right now? And they go, well, we want to see the Mexican wave. And so I do the Mexican wave for them. So it's a bit of a thing between my clients and I when they reach you, when I hear particular things from them, and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I heard that. I'm so glad I heard that. And usually it is around shifting that shame. You're absolutely right. Extracting the need from the emotion. So we will often feel something, like you were saying, you feel something, and we often there's almost that, that almost default position of reaching for something that isn't going to meet that need. And actually, what we're wanting to do is to change. What we're doing is changing the perception, which we're rewiring to say, actually, let's have a look at that emotion, but let's have a look at the other emotions that might be behind it, and let's have a look at what they're signposting you to. What is the actual need that you have right now? And it is usually nourishment, but not from the bottle of wine or the Maltesers or the loaf of bread. I had one lady who it was a box of frozen eclairs, but not defrosted. So, and we were talking about, well, what did that actually do? Well, it made me feel worse. It made me feel worse, and I feel shame, and I'm harsh. And now I'm going to starve myself because I've eaten those. It becomes this awful cycle.
Absolutely. It's another tool to actually then fall into the guilt and shame, and keep perpetuating that cycle of, I'm not
self-flagellation.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just looking at the time. I could talk to you all day, because I know that and I know we are actually going to see each other very soon.
Perhaps we should do a day event. Perhaps we should do a day event together.
I was actually thinking about a day event. So a self-compassion summit is what I was thinking of doing. So that is on the cards. So I do feel it's going to be a day event. But I know that you've answered the questions that I was going to ask because it's been part of the conversation. But if there was one, and it's a hard one in this one in some respects, because some people, think that, that maybe there needs to be a list. But if there's one message, about embracing self-compassion.
Can you still hear me?
Message be, what would be that one tip? I suppose I hate the term tip usually, but what would be that one inspirational message that you could give about welcoming self-compassion in?
I would say that I would encourage you to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't expect it to be easier. Certainly not to begin with. It does take some work and some discipline, in the sense of, we're changing the pattern of what we're doing. And as Helen and I think of intimated in a couple of the parts of this conversation, that a lot of this stuff is very deeply embedded. Not even our stuff. It's stuff that we got from our mothers, got from their mothers, and they got from their mothers, and so on and so forth. So don't expect the work to be over. Get comfortable with the idea of this is a gift for yourself and for the generations that you will know and the generations that you won't even know, but that you are a cycle breaker if you are doing this. And I applaud you.
Brilliant. Become the cycle breaker. I don't know who Facebook user is, but watching whilst working, but from what I've been able to tap into, it has been extremely interesting and inspirational. Thank you both. Facebook user, I will find out who you are. I couldn't have my phone on to check because it'll take all the bandwidth. So I will look at who that is in a bit and respond. Louise, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for the inspiration at the end there as well. I think that's a hugely important message about breaking the cycle and becoming the cycle breaker. And I think that's what we are doing. We're hopefully an inspiration for doing that. for anybody watching. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, want to work with you, want to find out more? Plug your book, because I'm
okay.
going to buy it, so I'm just waiting to be able to get a hard copy.
So yes, as Helen has kindly mentioned, my first book is available on Amazon. Have a slight ethical issue with, but anyway, it's there for now, and it is called You First: Your Body, Your Needs, Guilt-Free. So I'd love for you to get started there. I am on social media. I'm on Facebook as Louise Westra Health Mastery. I'm on Instagram as Louise Westra Health, and I'm also on LinkedIn as Louise Westra. I've got a bit of a, love-hate relationship with social media, but you can come and find me there for sure. Yes, exactly right. But yeah, if you are wanting to get started, want to know more about how I work, what I do, the book is, like, you can get the downloadable version for, I think, 10 quid, paperback for 14 or 15. So as somebody was saying to me yesterday, it is unbelievable value for money after nearly 20 years of working with clients. So I would love for you to give that gift to yourself.
And I hope people will. And I'm looking forward to giving that gift to myself as well by picking it up when I'm over. And when I see you in 2 weeks' time, is it? I'm going to see you in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing that. And I'm
12 days, 12 days, Helen.
12 days. Is it 12 days? My God. Yeah. I start driving over next Thursday. I start, next Thursday, 16th. So packing the dogs into the car and driving over and looking forward to doing that. But I'm really looking forward to reading your book too. And I can't thank you enough for giving the time this morning to this conversation. And if I can, surreptitiously ask right now, if I create a summit, whether you'd be part of that summit. That would be fantastic.
Of course I would.
Yeah. But it's been I've loved it this morning, Louise, and thank you so much for giving the time to us and to this conversation and sharing all of your inspiration here in a very short space of time that I know could have gone on for longer. But thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being asked. So.
Oh no, I'm kind of overwhelmed with all the women that have said that they want to do this, and just amazing, incredible women like yourself. And so thank you for being a part of it and sharing the word and sharing the inspiration.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.